All right, so let's put the Ender-5 S1 together. So in this plastic bag, we have a few things, starting here with some stickers, and this is just one sheet. Actually, no, they are cut out. Okay, so they are individual little stickers that you can put on like your laptop or whatever you want. We got a warranty card and after sales information here on the back. Here we get a piece of paper that you can actually use for leveling, and on it, hopefully you guys can see, but we have a material guide, so it kind of helps you understand what kind of speeds, retractions, and temperatures that you need. And also on the back of that, we have leveling tips. So yeah, pretty cool. And of course we have the manual itself, which is this quick start guide. Very nice little booklet. Got the parts list and then assembly instructions, which there is quite a few steps, but doesn't look too complicated. But then again, there is a few things to do here. So we're going to start with step 1, which is the 3.1. And that's going to be putting the 4 corners or the channels on the base. And we're going to need 8 M525 bolts. So that's the packet that has a bunch of them in it, and it'll be kind of hard to see maybe on video, but we can see there it says M525. We're going to need 2 on each corner, and on the picture there we can see that channel labeled with 1 goes up front, and then 2 on the right back and 3 on the left back. And on the channels themselves we can see that they're all labeled. Yeah, they made it quite easy and shouldn't be very difficult to figure out. All right, so let's go ahead and do the 2 up front. And you can't really mistake this because you have a smooth side and a grooved side of the channel. And also the smooth side has the sticker on here, which goes to the front like this. And all of them are going to face this way. And I'm going to use a spool here to prop up the front of the printer, so it's much easier to get to. But yeah, we got a couple holes in there that our bolt can go through. And we're going to put the channel on top and run them down. And grab our largest Allen wrench. But I'm not going to snug them up yet because we want them to move a little. They might have to give some give as we assemble it. And once we get all of the main parts together, we'll tighten everything up. All right, let's do on this other side. All right, and we got both of the fronts on. So the rears are the same way. 2 goes on this side and 3 on the other. Now for these, the channels are not smooth. You guys can see we got some drilled holes through the one on number 2 here. You just line up where the sticker is to the front. And we got the 3 here. And all of our channels are on. All right, so that wasn't too bad. Let's see what our next step is. So for step 2, we're going to be putting this upper portion onto the channels we just installed, the corners. And we're also going to need 8 M525 bolts, the same ones. And so grabbing the upper portion with the Creality logo going to the front, we're going to set it over the channels, and we should line up quite easily. And there we go. That actually sat exactly where it needs to be. And so we got 2 bolts on each corner holding it down. So yeah, so far as you guys can see, we only have 2 steps in and we pretty much have the box built. So I started them all by hand, and now we're going to run them down with the wrench. But again, don't tighten them yet. Just kind of get them to start snugging and then stop, as we want everything to kind of line up nicely and settle in its place. So if everything feels good and solid, we can go ahead and tighten all these bolts up, and then also including the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And you want to snug them up reasonably, but don't go crazy. Since this is kind of like a box design, it's already naturally very rigid. And that is all of them, and you guys can see that was actually not very hard at all and quite straightforward. So for the next part, we actually need to move this out of the way because we're going to be working on our build plate with the Z-axis frame first before we connect it to the printer itself, which will connect here in the back. So I'm going to slide this to the side, and we're going to bring this in. And actually guys, I think the motor is the bottom, not the top, and the bed actually sits like this on top. So I'm going to run it down just a little bit here by turning this coupler, and we'll grab our bed assembly. And we're going to be using the same M525 bolts, which there are exactly 4 left. And on the manual, they recommend using like some kind of support here, piece of a foam from the box to hold your build plate as you try to connect it. But we're just going to try to do it here in the air. But yeah, it just simply sits like this, and that's how we're going to connect it. So yeah, could be a little tedious here, but shouldn't be too bad. And probably a good idea to remove this flexible steel sheet so we don't get it greasy. And now I'm going to snug them up. And that should be good right here. And this is what it looks like. So yeah. So for the next part, we need to install the plastic supports that go underneath the bed. And that's these here. So we got a right and a left. but we need to flip this upside down. And so the right will actually be on this side if you're looking at it like this, just like that. And hopefully you guys can see that, but yeah, it just sits around the bearing here. And then there's a thread here that a bolt goes through. On the other side of the bearing, we have like a cap with 2 brass threadings. They'll go around, and that's how we're going to clamp it down. So yeah, I guess this is extra support for the bed. So the bolts that go up front here are M520s, which there's a separate bag for that. So I'm going to start this one. And then for the clamping is the M525s. And there's actually a separate bag for that also with exactly the 4 bolts we need. Put the cover there and then run our bolts through, and just like that. So yeah guys, not very hard to figure out. Quite simple actually. So M520 up front, and then M525s for this cap. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is that on the cap there's like a little cutout, and the cutout actually goes down, and that's how they will mount. So now we just need to tighten everything up. So for this you want to kind of push it down because it's a clamping force, so it's not anything tightening it down. So push it down and then clamp it with the bolts. And I would recommend doing this side first before tightening this bolt. And don't go crazy on this, as it doesn't need to be crazy tight. And now we can go ahead and tighten this bolt and snug it up, and this side is done. So we'll do the same thing on this side. All right, we are finished with assembling our build plate, and you guys can see what that looks like. So yeah, now we can bring our printer back in, and hopefully you guys see these holes here. That's where it's going to mount. So now we just have to figure out how to bring it in. We do need to lower the bed all the way down, so I'm just pushing it, and then we're going to go into it like this with the motor on the bottom, and then kind of like set it inside this gap. And then we're going to lift the printer because we need to get this piece on the other side of this channel, just like that. And then kind of pull our back, and then it's all going to line up. So it's kind of hard to see, but yeah, if you just go down with the bottom first, it'll kind of make sense, and then lift the whole printer, and this kind of goes under it. And there's the shaft that it has to clear too, so it's all kind of like a tight fit, but it does go in actually quite easily. And maybe I could demonstrate it one more time here from the side. It might be a little bit easier to see. So basically we got the bed all the way down. Then we're coming in like this on an angle. And then you want to be with the back all the way touching here while raising the whole printer on the top. And then the top portion will clear this channel and go underneath it and then kind of fall down. And now it's in there. Hopefully that made sense. And so for the next part, we're going to use M530 bolts to secure it, which is in its own packet. And there are 4 of them, which will go through these larger holes here into our Z-axis assembly. So honestly, guys, I'm thinking that this is much easier than I anticipated from the beginning, as we're mostly just putting larger pieces together. So now we need to snug these 4 bolts up nice and tight. But again, don't go crazy. Just whenever you start feeling good resistance, stop, because you don't want to strip the threads. Just like that, we are done with this step. So for the next part, we're going to be installing these braces, and they go in the corner on the back of the printer, and that's these here. And the way they want you to install the left and right is the left will go on this side with the L pointing up and the R like this. Not sure why that matters, because they look exactly the same, but maybe it does. In any case, we need to flip the printer around. Probably better to see here from the angle, but yeah, since this is the right side, we can put the R up like this, and it literally just kind of sits in the channel just like that. And there's threads that line up in the channels. M520 bolts will go through. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove this sticker in the back since we don't need it there anymore. So it's easier to do this if you put the bolt on the wrench and then kind of go into it. All right, so the right side's done. And now we can do the left. So I guess I'm going to put the L to the top, remove the sticker here. And these braces will give us rigidity in the frame. All right. So this thing's coming along pretty quick and looking really nice. I'm going to go ahead and peel these stickers off too. So for the next part, we have the spool holder, which mounts on the right side of the printer, right over here. And you guys can probably see these threaded holes. And that simply puts the spool holder right here. Now we can go ahead and mount the plastic piece to it, and there's like a locking nut that goes on there and then tightens itself. We're gonna install it towards the smooth side, and so we're just gonna line up the nut and then churn it with our hand here, and it all locks in, and just like that. And the 2 bolts that hold the spool holder down is the silver M514 bolts in its own pack. So we're gonna line it up here. Maybe we can flip to this side. You guys can see the actual bolts there. So this is a little fiddly to get in because the wrenches don't have a ball point at the end. So a little harder to run the bolts down, but not too bad. So before you tighten it, try to line up the spool holder here flat with the channel. And now we can snug these up. And that's it. So yeah, making really good progress. So for the next part, we're just going to be plugging everything in, all our wiring, and also installing our PTF tubing there on the top and kind of organizing the wires and things like that. So yeah, let's go ahead and go to the back. And first thing we can go ahead and connect is the cable coming from the bed. And I'm going to go ahead and raise this. And that plugs in right here on the back of the control unit. So there is a slot, it lines up. And when you line it up, it kind of goes in, and then there's a locking washer that locks it. So that's in. We got a couple wires here, and maybe I can zoom you guys in a bit, but yeah, there's 2 wires. And one of them goes to the motor, which is down here. You guys probably can't see, but it's the larger one. That's gonna plug down there. And then the smaller one plugs right here to the end stop switch, and the wiring actually has labeling on it which says Z, so this is for the Z axis. Then we got a whole pack of wires here going up, and so the flat one will actually go to the hot end, which we'll deal with in a second. But these here, the smaller ones, we can see the labels on them. These are Y motor or end stop switch, and this one is D, which I'm guessing is for the filament detector right here. So let's do the Y axis first. Hopefully you guys can see that, but we're in the right back corner where our Y motor and end stop switch is. And so we're gonna come here from the back and connect the motor and also the end stop switch. Yeah, a little hard to see, but yeah, hopefully you guys saw that. So that's where these 2 go. And so you guys were just looking in this corner, and now we're looking over here, which is where the filament detector is. And that's the wire with the D on it, or at least that's what mine says, and plugs in right here. So if we look here on the bottom, we have this flat cable coming out here, and that's actually going to run through here and then to the top. And so right here we have kind of like a little clip or cable management that this thing should fit in, which it does tightly. You guys can see that. We do have some cable clips that we can use here to make this look all nice, but the top 2 cables have our X-axis plugs and also the main plug for the hot end. So the X-axis motor and end stop switch is right here. So the end stop switch is the smaller one, and the motor is the larger one, and the wires are labeled X. And then if we flip to the front, maybe you guys can see here, this is where our main ribbon cable plugs in, and there's a couple tabs you gotta spread apart, and then when you plug it in, it's going to kind of lock together. And then we can tuck this cable into this relief bracket here. So yeah. And so for the last part we need to install is this PTF e-tubing, which goes from here all the way back to our detector. The reason we need this is because our spool holders down here on the side has to somehow feed through here. Now if it was mounted on top, you can feed straight down to this. And so it appears that this piece here, it comes off. Most likely there's a brass insert in there. So if you're going to build something custom to feed from the top, that can possibly work without using this tube. But the way it's intended here is the tube goes inside there, and the other end goes into the detector. There is a little clip in the spare parts that we can use to lock it in, just like that. So now it's not going to come out easily. Now this other end actually comes off really easy, and I think that's done on purpose just in case you need to feed it in yourself. But yeah, with this tubing here, you know, it's going to be quite tedious somewhat to have to push the filament all the way through yourself until the direct drive can actually grab it. So yeah, I think the fastest way would be just to push it through here and then grab it yourself, push it down, and then put the PTFE tubing in. But then again, you know, you could modify to have something coming down from the top and feeding it. So we also have this little cable clip here, and I think it goes somewhere on top where it kind of holds them together, and it does kind of twist. Yeah, not sure exactly that's how it goes, but something like that. And this thing can travel any direction. All right, it appears that maybe this cable here also needs to go. That's the one for the X-axis all together, because it's kind of just dangling around, and it needs to move also with all of the other cables. Actually, yeah, that works really good right there. So yeah, that's pretty much how this part goes on. So the only thing we really have left to do is use these cable tie or clips to organize our cable here on the side. And the way this works, it just clips around into the channel vertically like this. But yeah, kind of like that. And that really cleans up the look. Actually, I'm thinking this cable probably should have went in there too. So in any case, guys, you get the point. You can put these clips in here, however many you need. This cable here needs to be loose because it needs to go up and down. So yeah, so I'm going to clip them back out and actually run all of the cables together. We'll get a much cleaner look here out of our cable management. So yeah, that's actually all of them. Maybe this is a little overkill for this, but it tucks it in really nice and looks great. Now, because our whole upper portion here with everything that moves was pre-assembled, it should be all adjusted and the way it needs to be. So if you want to, you can check it. There's rollers here on top and also rollers on the side. So all of mine are perfectly adjusted. So if yours are not, the rollers on the bottom do have eccentric nuts. Same thing for the hot end and this other side too. And this would be the wrench that you use to adjust that. And with the belts, you can kind of see them running here. It looks pretty good. And also we got belts here on both sides and you can kind of check that all too. So that concludes pretty much everything with assembly on this printer.